I'd like to talk to you for a few moments about the evolution of uncontrolled scavenging at landfills and transfer stations into something more evolved, something that is being called more and more often licensed or controlled salvaging or upcycling operations. My first thought or reaction when I think about scavenging at a landfill or transfer station facility is generally an image which strikes fear to my heart. Mostly thought of how to protect the public from dangers associated with these facilities. As we know, landfills and transfer stations can be extremely hazardous facilities, especially for the public when they're unfamiliar with the operations and equipment at those sites. When I think about the development of formalized or licensed scavenging programs at a landfill site or transfer station, what I'm really thinking about is how to reduce the liability to the owners or the operators of that facility, and how to protect the public from harm and still allow them access to those materials at the site. An example of an uncontrolled scavenging operation of the past can be found up at the Yellowknife landfill in an area known by the locals as Waikea. This area has been established to allow for people to drop off materials that may be useful to others, and then to have access to that area to rummage through and find materials which may be useful to them for household repurposing. An example of the evolution from uncontrolled scavenging to controlled or licensed scavenging, as it was called at this particular site, can be found at an interior British Columbia landfill, where they attempted to establish an area for contractors to drop off clean wood waste, where then they would have access to that area under a memorandum of understanding or agreement to then upcycle those materials. Lessons learned from this facility was that despite the best intent, there is additional resources required from the regional district or the landfill owner to continue to maintain those sites and those stockpiles to reduce the liability, to ensure that those materials don't become a hazard to the site. A great example of a very simple controlled salvaging operation can be found at a small rural transfer station, where the gate attendants saw a need to provide an area for people to drop off useful goods and have access to those within a safe manner. They fashioned a small shed in a corner of the site and then started pointing people towards that area to drop off useful goods that may be reused or repurposed. As part of this evolution of organized or licensed salvage operations at landfills and transfer stations, we've seen numerous reuse it or take it or leave it sheds being constructed at these sites. These areas provide for safe, dry, clean areas for people to drop off and pick up materials for salvage or reuse. As part of this evolution, we're also seeing the public getting more and more actively involved in upcycling and recycling operations. A great example of that is found in Okotoks, Alberta, where the Foothill Salvage and Recycling Society has established a take it or leave it or upcycling facility, which the public can then access materials for reuse. We've also seen a number of commercial operations evolve over the years to further formalize or license salvaging. A great example is the Edmonton Architectural Clearinghouse, which was established back in the late 80s, which salvages building materials and brings those materials to a centralized location for the public to be able to access those materials for purchase at significant discounts. In summary, we've come a long way from uncontrolled scavenging of the past and have seen the evolution of controlled and licensing salvage operations that can run complementary with our solid waste management systems, both landfills and transfer stations. There are tremendous examples out there, both from the public, private, and nonprofit perspective, on how we can operate and develop and evolve, ultimately, these upcycling operations.